Hello viewers, and thanks for choosing Property Focus, your window into the world of architecture, building, construction and real estate. As the Kenyan government slowly reopens the economy, the key questions for our industry are: how has the outbreak of the pandemic impacted the local commercial property market, and what will be the long-term effects? In today's episode, we have Sarit and Nitin Shah, the directors of one of the first and biggest malls in the country, to tell us how commercial real estate is responding to COVID-19. Thereafter, we'll talk to Paresh Shah, a senior lawyer in Kenya, on how to initiate that conversation with your landlord as we prepare for the new normal. Lastly, Alex Naga, a thriving essential services cleaning expert, tells us how to observe cleanliness in a commercial space during the pandemic. So settle in, let's go for it. I'm your host, Peter Ngigi. Now, shopping malls in Nairobi have rolled out plans to ensure that their visitors and their businesses remain afloat. Let's have a chat with one of these smart retail commercial developers to find out how they're planning this accordingly in just a bit. Let's go find out. And welcome to Property Focus.
Thank you, Peter. Welcome to Sarit Center.
Excellent. So now March 15th came. What were the immediate impacts to retail commercial spaces?
Yes, after the first COVID announcement in Kenya, and the government announcements that came through, foot traffic, footfalls in the mall suddenly dropped. People were asked to stay home. People were asked to work from home. And there was very little movement on the roads. I think the curfews came later, but immediately the impact on the mall was less footfall. And that impacted all the businesses in the center.
As a mall developer, what would you advise other players in the industry?
I think before COVID, there was lots of retail space available. COVID made it worse because those retail spaces were now not in demand. As a mall owner, my advice to other malls would be support your tenants. Do as much marketing, inexpensive marketing, because malls cannot currently afford marketing budgets. So inexpensive marketing, and this is social media. This is there are so many things you can do within the mall to promote your tenants. You can bring external events, bring them into the center, which will attract their own footfalls. Without your tenants, you are not a mall. Any empty space that you get, if you don't support a tenant, will be space that you will not be able to lease very quickly. So, look after your tenants, one. But the rider there is, you have to meet your financial obligations. So, the limits are there. The other thing that landlords can do is to enforce onto the tenants, and in the mall generally, all the government and Ministry of Health directives. Keep your center clean, avoid large crowds, make sure your customers are wearing masks, make sure they are sanitizing their hands, make sure your whole center is clean, sanitized. Yes. So our cleaners have been instructed to use special liquids to clean the floors, to clean the walls, to clean the washrooms as well. Washrooms are very important. Provide sufficient soap in the washrooms because not everybody likes to use sanitizers. And ensure that your mall is clean. Respect government directives, very important. Yes. And as soon as possible, when things open up, make sure you are ready to be back in business with full force. Absolutely. Yeah?
Well, thank you very much, Nitin, for coming onto the show.
Thanks, Peter.
Wonderful. And now let's hear from Sarit Shah, the co-director of the Sarit Center. And welcome to Property Focus, Sarit.
Thank you, Peter. Welcome to the Sarit Center and Sarit Expo Center.
Thank you very much. Sarit, tell us, what are some of the drastic measures you put in place immediately the pandemic came upon us?
It's been a very interesting journey for us. Our baseline was obviously the Ministry of Health and WHO guidelines. And our focus was safety first. So we ensured that everyone in the mall must wear a mask, mandatory, right? Then as you enter the mall, the temperature is checked. And obviously, if the temperature is not up to the as per required guideline, then we offer politely that we take you to an in-house doctor or in-house clinic, or we ask you, you may proceed to your home or go and visit your doctor, and for the safety of others. And most importantly was the sanitization of the whole mall, regular sanitization, which was done in common areas, and that's our responsibility. And obviously tenants fulfilling their responsibility of sanitizing their outlets as well. So it's been very drastic, but safety first.
What do you advise our viewers who are watching the show? Some people are a bit skeptical about brick and mortar means of retail. What do you advise the mall users?
A very interesting question. And we've got a lot of feedback from our tenants, anchor tenants, small tenants, who also do online business. So the feedback is, at the start of the COVID pandemic, online business started rising. If we see the last couple of months, the feedback we have is customers are back in the stores. There are some stores who are back to 100% pre-COVID level sales. Some stores are at 80%, some are 60% based on your user. So what we want to say is, for the future, we've got this period, yes, is affecting everyone, but we have a vision that brick and mortar is still to stay. Online business is increasing, but we still have time before it hits, I think, our industry, especially here in Kenya. And we've just completed phase 3 of our master plan. We're more than double of what we were in terms of size and lettable space. We still have got phase 4, 5, and 6 in our vision of 20 years, which is commercial building, retail building, and a hotel that goes with the expo center. So we believe brick and mortar is still here to stay.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Sarit. And there you have it from Sarit. Brick and mortar is still here to stay. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to be joined with a commercial property lawyer. And later on, we're going to hear from a cleaning expert. So stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. And welcome to Property Focus Paris.
Thank you very much, and welcome to our office here at Bowman's. Very, very pleased to have NTV here.
Wonderful. Tell us about yourself and what you do.
I am a lawyer, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I've been practicing law in Kenya for the last 20 plus years, and prior to that, a little bit in the UK. And I do a lot of work in the real estate space, as well as some other work I do in the M&A space as well. But I've recently, and prior to this pandemic, done a lot of work for tenants, landlords, real estate developers, and so on. So that's kind of the work that I do here.
Wonderful. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Now, with the pandemic taking place, does claim on force majeure still apply in our tenancy agreements, especially at this particular point in time?
A lot of people are talking about force majeure and other legal terms without really understanding what these are. So let me just very quickly tell you what, in layman's terms, what force majeure is.
Please.
So force majeure would be an event that is beyond the control of someone occurring, which then makes it very difficult for you to comply with your obligations under a contract. In essence, that is it. So for example, if there was an earthquake and this building fell apart, touch wood, then I would not be able to comply with my obligations as a tenant, and my landlord probably won't be able to comply with giving me this premises to work from.
Yes.
That's kind of what force majeure is, so something beyond your control. So yes, in the true sense, a pandemic or an epidemic of this nature could be seen as a force majeure. But that's not the only element of the manner in which a tenant can say, how can I use this to save my business or help my costs and so on? Because what needs to happen there, number one, the force majeure has to be contractual.
Yes.
So it has to be in your lease, that clause.
Okay.
And I can tell you, in many, many years of working here, very rarely you will find commercial leases or indeed residential leases with that kind of clause. So prior to this pandemic, it was very rare to have that clause.
Okay.
So if it's not there, there's nothing you can do about it. If it is there, then the event must have happened. The event must have caused a problem that you can't comply with your obligations.
Yes.
And lastly, then there must be contractually what happens in that event. Now, all these things, quite frankly, are not there in most leases. So when we say, yes, force majeure can help you, actually, if it's not there contractually, it can't. If it was there, then yes, you could have remedies to delay your obligations or possibly to suspend your obligations, and in some extreme cases, to terminate your obligations. But I can tell you in the last 6 months or whatever we've been in this pandemic, I don't think there have been any in commercial leases that have, certainly that I've seen, that have successfully managed to use, or even if there is one, use a force majeure clause.
Legally, in terms of obligations landlords have to their tenants in reducing safety, are there any obligations? We
have statutory obligations in this country. We have legislation which says basic health and safety measures must be taken. And by and large, I mean, they're not terribly complicated, but you've got to have certain systems in place.
Yes.
And of course, what over and above that, to keep your reputation and to keep people coming to your offices and to your malls, you've got to go a bit over and above and say, actually, I'm going to create a very safe environment. So again, as much as we have basic levels of health and safety, and people by and large comply with that, people have gone over and above by putting in many extra checks for social distancing, for scanning, et cetera, wearing masks and this and that, and monitoring all that. And therefore, again, that has just kind of happened. But yes, I do have a legal obligation to provide a safe environment for our staff and for our visitors everywhere. That's a kind of basic obligation.
Now we've got some questions from our pages. My landlord is threatening to evict me. What can I do? And the second question is, I'm struggling to pay my rent as I've been self-isolating with the coronavirus. What should I do?
Look, the first one is a difficult one. First of all, one can't just be evicted. I mean, I'm going to simplify this a bit because it depends whether what kind of tenant you are. But by and large, someone can't just come and tell you, get out. There is a process. That's why we have laws, and that's a process to follow. Often there's a court process, and there are other processes that might be described in a lease. So a landlord can't just do that. So if someone is threatening you for that, then, and you think you have a business that may survive post-pandemic, then you've got to have that sensible discussion I've just talked about.
Yes.
If your landlord is being very, very difficult, then there are extreme things you can do. You can go to court and get injunctions, and I think courts in this scenario probably are going to be a bit sympathetic to tenants who are in genuine difficulty, but long-term are not. And then in the worst-case scenario, if your business is not going to survive, you've got to close shop. And that is a worst-case scenario. Now, what is a landlord going to achieve by that? He's going to lose goodwill of the tenant. The tenant will, the business will die effectively, and you can do what you want, but it's not very easy to rent a shop or an office in this market. So you've got to work together.
True.
So you've got to have that sensible discussion. But in the worst-case scenario, yes, there are insolvency procedures, there are other things that can happen to say, well, look, I can't do anything now. So that is that. As far as people who have been self-isolating and therefore genuinely don't have an income or are struggling, similar situation. I mean, unfortunately, the contract itself doesn't protect you. If I've lost my livelihood and I have a legal obligation to pay you, I still have to pay you.
Yes.
The fact that I can't, again, the same thing applies, where I have to have a sensible discussion or surrender and say, I can't do anything, I'm not going to survive. Pole sana. So that's, and by and large in the last 6 months, I think sense has prevailed, certainly where I sit from.
Let's hope that happens. Thank you very much, Pars.
Thank you, and it's a real pleasure.
Keeping optimistic, only on Property Focus. And Billboard is up next in the materials profile thereon after. If you want to feature on our billboards, reach out to us on our social media pages. Stay tuned. And welcome to Property Focus.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
Excellent. Tell us about yourself and what you do.
Well, my name is Alex Nyaga. I'm the Group CEO at Parapet Group of Companies.
Okay.
This is an integrated facilities management company with divisions in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and South Sudan. Yes.
Wonderful. Now, a cleaning company would be considered an essential service. Come March 15th, how was the industry affected?
Whoa, just like every other industry across the world.
Yes.
We were hit hard. And in fact, in the first 2 weeks of the lockdown being announced, we lost about 30% of our business. So we had been a labor intensive company. We lost close to around 600 staff.
Wow.
Who were sent away on unpaid leave and stuff like that. So it was pretty tough. It was we had to make some tough calls, and it was not easy on any one of us. And as an industry, of course, we had to adapt very quickly to the emerging changes that have just happened, where in one sense you're providing cleaning services, and then in another you're then now be required to provide certain hygiene solutions to ensure that we're fighting the virus together. So it took a lot of innovations and quick adaptations that we had to put in place to be able to survive, so to speak.
Okay. Are there existing trends, speaking of which, that had to be accelerated as a result of this pandemic?
Yes, indeed. One of the things that we had to do is the first requirement was the sanitizers. Yes, there was a huge shortage of that, and our first priority was to get the sanitizers for our clients, which we went ahead and did, and it's one of our major product lines now in terms of getting sanitizers, face masks, all the things around the dispensers for the washrooms, the touchless, all that kind of stuff. So we accelerated a lot of technology around that whole space of low touch, high hygiene. Yeah, so especially in the washroom space where everything is all touchy. So we got out to providing solutions around that space, as well as keeping the office spaces safe for the staff that was still working. You see, our first priority, first of all, was to ensure that our staff, we have close to around 4,000 staff out there, we had to ensure that they are first of all safe.
Yes.
Right? The pandemic was growing and affecting so many people from all societies, then we realized we had to move quickly to ensure that first of all our staff were safe. So by training them and equipping them with the right PPEs to ensure that they are safe in those workspaces. So it presented itself an opportunity for us to actually bring out some of these PPEs and apart from for our own internal use them for the general public and sell them to general public. At the same time, quick adaptations around what were the trends that were going around areas of keeping spaces free from COVID. And we have an R&D team that has been working tirelessly to ensure that some of these solutions are brought to play in our client sites. We have close to around 400 sites that we're actually servicing across these regions, and ideally we are there to provide that solution of ensuring that they are well kept and they are safe in all circumstances.
Wonderful. Now, many people are now getting back into their office spaces, assuming their roles. What are some of the precautions that you'd advise some of these professionals?
It's everybody's responsibility to actually ensure that they're keeping their workspaces clean and hygienic at all times. And I think one of the things that I would like to encourage a lot of organizations to do is to first of all do a health and safety check. Yeah, and Parapet does provide that, where we just come around and just look at what are some of the systems or touch points that you need to change. Even something as easy as how staff, from the time they come into the office, the flow in the office space to ensure that the social distancing is still maintained, and the washrooms are actually clean and ideally as much as possible, avoiding a situation where any staff has to touch anything.
Yes.
So apart from their desks, where what are the doors, the entry levels of the for security purposes,
Yes.
the monitoring of the temperature of the staff, the monitoring of each and every contact of the staff within the building, and from the in and out of that. So I think foremost, I think it's everyone's priority. We must, hygiene right now, I think is a top level engagement right now, even above security, because you're dealing with a very invisible enemy, so to speak. And as such, we have to really come out strong in ensuring that our facilities, be it in our schools, be it in our places of worship, be it in our areas of social activities or sports, are all kept well sanitized at all times. Yeah, and that way, we have a safer nation. So,
Thank you very much, Alex, for coming onto the show.
karibu sana.
Excellent.
thanks
And
for
there
having
you
me.
have it with Alex Nyaga, dealing with the invisible enemy, only on Property Focus. Thank you for being with us from the start of the show. Whether the situation lasts weeks or months, it is clear that the global response to the virus fundamentally changed the real estate and retail and commercial spaces. We never like to say goodbye, but as always, if you want to reach out to us and showcase your property or to get the latest insights and updates on the real estate market in Kenya, you can reach out to us on our social media pages and we'll be more than happy to be in touch. On Facebook, Property Focus, and Property_Focus_ on Instagram. This has been most wonderful. I've been your host, Peter Ngigi. Till next time.